Hi everyone, editing Mariah here. Before the episode starts, I wanted to apologize for the audio quality to you all and our wonderful guest because I'm fairly new to all of this. For me, it's very much a trial and error process, and this was a bit of an error on my side of things. The audio is really echoey at times and has a bit of background noise because we recorded in a different room than we normally do. And I was just too tired in the moment to really think things through properly. Regardless of all of this, I hope you enjoy and listen in because even though the audio quality was not the best and you can hear our lovely dogs in the background at times, the content was so incredible in my humble opinion. Our guest is so great and really knows what being compassionate is all about. Welcome to the Mariah Effect. I'm Mariah.
I'm Jason.
And I'm Patti.
Today we are so blessed to have a wonderful guest with us. Somebody who's very, very, very close to me, very near and dear to my heart. So we're just going to be talking about a story that happened between the two of us and talking about kind of the effects of that through, my life, through Patti's life, and just kind of an overall moral of the story, basically, the Mariah Effect, if you will. But first, let's get to know our wonderful guest, Patti.
Well, thanks for this opportunity to do this with you, Mariah. I'm really excited to support you in this podcast, and it's an honor to be here with you. So, who am I? I'm Patti. Things that I identify with. I'm Japanese American. My mom is Japanese, first generation over from Japan, and my dad is American. He was stationed in Japan as into the Air Force, and that's how we met my mom. I grew up the daughter of an Air Force man and a Buddhist mom, and I am Christian. And there was a lot of interesting things that went on in our home because of that difference, that went on, and I'm really grateful for the different experiences I had with a Christian dad and a Buddhist mom and the things that it taught me. Currently, I'm a mom of 8 children and 8 grandchildren. Love them all so very much. We have 6 daughters and 2 sons, and the next generation we have 6 grandsons and 2 granddaughters. So the gender flipped when we got to the next generation. I've been married to my husband. This year will be 35 years, and so grateful for him and his influence in my life. Great family I'm married into. I am not the typical person. I don't understand in-law jokes. I have the best in-laws in the world, and I'm really lucky that way. And I don't know, what else should I say?
That was pretty good. What a beautiful life.
It really is. I'm really blessed. I feel very, very fortunate in my life.
I think that, you are such a great, wonderful person, and I've had such a awesome honor to be a part of your life. What is our connection between the two of us? You want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So you and my daughter Mallory. So Mallory's my 4th daughter, and you guys got to know each other in high school. Somehow I always think it's junior high, and you always correct me that it was actually high school. And in my memory, all of a sudden you guys were just best friends, and you were in our home, and we loved you, and you started calling me mom, and here I am, your surrogate mom.
Yeah, I feel like me and Mallory, we became friends in such a
it almost feels unconventional, but like anytime I talk to anybody who has been best friends for a really long time, they don't really remember how they became best friends, or they don't remember like where they went from being just like acquaintances to like best friends together all the time. I spent so much of my high school years not really wanting to be in my own home, and very graciously, like, it's so weird to call you Patti. So graciously, Patti and Roland, Mallory's parents, both just let me, be here every single day after school, most weekends, just this constant person around, to the point where, like, a lot of the kids that were in the house when Mallory was growing up, like her younger siblings, view me as a sibling too. And it just kind of came to the point where I called you mom all the time, I called dad dad, and I feel just as much a part of the family as anybody else. And it's where I'm living now, with everything going on with my chemotherapy and not being able to work or be able to afford to take care of myself. Like, I get to live with them and have a whole bunch of people helping me out and being there for me whenever I need anything. Even when I don't ask for something, they in some ways bully me into asking me what I need, because I'm so bad at asking for things that I need. And mom is always the first person to check in and see how I'm doing, and I really appreciate that.
Well, we definitely look to you as a extension of our family and part of our family, and we're grateful to have you in our lives. Like I said in the beginning, you truly have blessed my life in multiple ways. I'm just grateful for you. I'm glad to have you here, and I'm glad that I can bully you into taking care of yourself when you need to.
This is kind of Jason's first interaction with my mom, even though I've talked to each of them about each of them on multiple occasions. Like, what is your first impression of mom, Jason?
She fits the description and much more. When you first told me about Patti and this family, it was like a whole new thing. I didn't even know you were in Utah at first, and I just think it's an incredible blessing that you have connected with people that love you and have brought you in and support you. And like I said about your life, Patti, you've built something that's so beautiful and impacts so many people, and I feel like as part of your family is an extension of Mariah. So it's fun to spend time together. What's funny for me though is to be on this call and hear you two describe your relationship now, knowing where the story of where the two of you initially connected. And so, Mariah, I thought it'd be fun for you to tell that story.
Okay, so let's get into the meat of this. So when me and Mallory first met each other, it's kind of a similar sort of situation where when we first met, I had an entirely different first impression of Mallory than what was to come. At the time, we were both really close friends with another person named David, and in our own ways. And so whenever we did things all together, it was like I wasn't really friends with Mallory, but she was also there. And so for a really long time, I didn't know very much about Mallory except for that she was also David's friend. For a really long time, I thought she was David's girlfriend, which is very funny to both of us now. But we would hang out occasionally, on our off period or whatever. And there was a day when we were going home, and on the bus, there was a bus that went just straight down Peoria for a really long ways. And my bus stop where I would get off would be right before Mallory's bus stop. And so I guess David was going over to Mallory's house or something, and I was on the bus, and our friend David was like, hey, you should come over to Mallory's house. Invited me over to her house as if he had any right to do so. And Mallory was kind of yeah, you could do that. That's sure. I'm sure that'll be okay. And I was like, are you sure? I could just get off. She's like, no, come on. So I stayed on the bus past my bus stop. We went to her bus stop, got off, went over to her house. I don't think anybody was home yet or anything, and we just kind of went upstairs into their living room, and Mallory started playing video games. I would just watch them, and Mallory's mom came home, Patti, and had never met me. I'm sure that David had been over a couple times before then, but she just came upstairs and she was very, very, very clearly upset already or frustrated. And when she came upstairs, we were playing the game, or they were playing the game and like saying stuff. And I think Mallory said something like, "Oh, hey Mom, I hope it's okay that like I have friends over." And Mom was just very much not okay with the fact that there were friends over. She came over, and I don't even remember exactly what she said, but it was something to the effect of, "No, it is not okay that people are over right now. They need to get out. I have too much going on. Like, I can't handle it. They need to go." Or something like that. It's not as if it echoes in my head sometimes. But I was in such a position where, like, I would go to other people's houses to get away from, you know, angry yelling and fighting that I was used to at my own home. And so when she was so upset, I was like, I don't want to be a part of, like, I don't want to cause any problems for Mallory. Like, I had only been around like angry, somewhat toxic behavior. So when she had that outburst, I just was like immediately so like not upset, but so skittish, I guess you could say. I was like, okay, I'll get out, I'll leave. And so I got up, I was walking out the door, I almost forgot my shoes, and just took off down the street, like, just out of there. And Mallory, she was just very shocked, I remember, and I was taking off down the street, and then David comes running down the street after me, and he goes, "No, wait, she said it's okay." And I was like, "It is not okay. She said it's not okay. I'm going home." And like, he came over and he basically like dragged me back to the house, and had me come inside. And I don't really remember if Mom like came up to me personally and said something to the both of us, or if it was just Mallory who came to us. I really don't remember, but it was basically like "I'm sorry, like, it's just been a hard day, like, it's okay that you're here." And so I remember I stayed for maybe like another hour or two or something, playing video games or talking or whatever, and then I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna go now. And I did not go back to the house for a really long time. And that was like the end of my freshman year, I think. And then the beginning of sophomore year, me and Mallory had a health class together, and we only knew each other really in that class. So we ended up becoming like really close in that class, to the point where around Halloween time she had asked me like, "Hey, like, we should go and do Halloween together. You can come over to my house." And I was like, "Ooh, yeah, that's fine. Like, as long as you clear it with your mom first." And she was like, "Yeah, of course." So then I went over for Halloween, and it was just like a completely different mom, like a completely different, like, wonderful, like, sweet, kind, like, "How was your day today? Like, we're having chili for dinner." Like, it was such a different experience. And I met her dad and like got to spend time with her siblings. Like, it was a totally different experience, and it just like really changed a lot of my process, like my thought process of like first impressions of people. But what do you remember, Mom, like mostly about that? Because I know when I first brought it up to you, or when we first started talking about the story, me and Mallory, to you, you were kind of like, "What?" Because like you hadn't remembered. But what are some things that you like remember maybe?
Yeah, so it's funny because when we talked about it, I was really embarrassed that that was your first impression of me, because I try really hard not to be that kind of person. And I joke with my kids a lot that, you know, I've matured a lot in the last 10 years or so. And I'm grateful for experiences that have helped me to mature and be better. But when you described that, I couldn't remember it at all. Like, I blocked it from my memory. Like, I don't want to remember acting like that ever. But then we talked about it more, and then you told me, I think in the background, here's what was going on during that time in your life. and maybe some things that were causing you stress. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. That was a really bad day. And then I could immediately feel like, yeah, I could see myself acting like that. Because of what was going on and because of the stress, you know, which didn't cause me any less embarrassment. I still think, you know, no matter what's going on in the background of my life, I should be kind to people, you know, but we should also be compassionate with ourselves. Like I said, I've matured a lot. So, yeah, I don't necessarily remember the exact events, but I can imagine that that's what I did. And I can imagine that I went like into my room or something, thought about what I just did, came back out and said, you know, I'm really sorry. Of course your friends can be here. And you said Mallory was shocked. Of course she would be shocked because that's not how I usually am. My kids always brought friends over. We always wanted to be that house in the neighborhood where our kids would bring their friends over. Anytime, they're welcome to bring their kids over. Because we always told our kids, I'd rather have you home with all your friends, knowing where you're at, knowing what you're doing, than off somewhere else not knowing. And so we always tried to be that house, that the kids could bring their friends over and feel comfortable. And that day I blew it.
I think it just goes to show that anyone can have bad days or be, we behave differently under stress. But I have a hard time believing, Patti, first of all, I do believe you matured a lot in 10 years, but I have a hard time believing that that was actually who you were back then. It was probably just one of those times. So it's incredible, though.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that, Jason. I mean, I think it's important for, on both sides of the story, right, to give compassion and give the benefit of the doubt when people behave poorly towards us for whatever reason it is. And if we can take a moment to pause and think, you know, I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning and says, who can I offend today? Who can I be rude to today? And go out searching for that. But sometimes that's how they show up, right? They just show up that way because of their life and stress and struggles that they're having. And so can't we just be compassionate and kind and not judgmental and give them the benefit of the doubt? Years ago, I worked for REI. One of my best jobs, I did phone sales for REI, and people would call in days before Christmas and want their order by Christmas time. We do our best, and then they call us after Christmas. You ruined our Christmas. You didn't get our order to us in time, and blah, blah, blah. And I learned then, like, how sad it is that one little thing could make them so upset. They must really be struggling. And to be able to reach back out in compassion instead of disbelief that you would be so rude to a person over the phone about your order not arriving when you ordered it the day before Christmas. and if we could just do that with all of our life, in all situations that we're in, give people the benefit of the doubt, and just believe they're showing up with their best, whatever their best is at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a meme going around the internet. People say, who hurt you? And I hate this meme because it's like, it's the opposite of compassion. It touches on something that's true, which is, you know, sometimes we show up and something has hurt us or something, you know, took place in our life in the background that the other people don't see, but it lacks compassion to sort of like put it on another person and say, you know, that. So it's interesting that that's circulating in our culture though right now.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I think that's taking something that could be like traumatic and turning it into something that's funny in order to like make it through the pain, you know? I think one huge thing with like, especially my generation, which I don't know exactly what my generation is because sometimes I think it's millennial and sometimes I feel like I'm more a part of Gen Z, but I'm kind of in that middle area. But I think that like Gen Z and like younger millennials do a lot of the time is they're not afraid of embracing like mental health issues and talking about trauma and things like that. And so with that comes like a lot of humor to kind of mask that. And so when you were talking about that, like, yeah, it's like it can come from a place where it sounds and it seems like it's not compassionate, but I feel like in some ways it's like the funny way to try and get to that, like the root of the issue. Like I think it's like the funny way to be able to talk about something that like is taboo, because at the end of the day, like a lot of the times when people act out or are rude or unkind to other people, it's because they've come across someone who looks like that person. They've come across someone who has some sort of characteristic as that person, and they just immediately in their body respond negatively to that sort of person. And that's not what happened between me and Mom, but like I know that there's a lot of times where I just immediately respond to unfortunately white men, because like in a negative manner, just because of my interaction with certain white men in my life, and being somebody who is a mixed woman in this day and age, like it is difficult to not have that first initial reaction of just trying to like kind of push them away or distance myself in some manner. I'm not rude, but I do have some sort of like preconceived notion of like, this is a person who is at a higher risk to hurt me. And so like, I think that first impressions are not who people are, but I think that it's okay to admit that we all have trauma, we all have things that have happened to us or happened near us growing up or as young adults, and like stuff like that sticks with you. And I think we have to have compassion for ourselves, like Mom said, in how we react to things.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Jason, have you ever had like a situation like that where somebody you came across was super rude or super unkind to you, or vice versa, where you reacted in that manner to somebody in the moment?
Yeah, I was actually I appreciate Patti being willing to talk about this story in the first place. I actually would like to follow with my own experience of having been someone who showed up in a way that was not what I'd like to show up. And I went through a very difficult time where I lost someone that I loved, and I believed I was actually going to marry, and Mariah, who you knew, and was working and traveling and changing time zones and under a lot of stress, and had an experience where because of mental health reasons, grief, loss, trauma, time zones, and like disintegration of my ability to like self-regulate. I actually had an experience with a colleague where I was very rude, very short, and I caused her to cry. And in my experience of the moment, I thought I was justified in how I had showed up and everything in between, but later, became a scenario that I think about a lot as someone I wish knew how I felt differently about that moment, and also who I wish knew what I was experiencing in my own life at the time. But yeah, I'm just always struck by we know very little about what's happening inside of the other person when we're with another.
Yeah, and then Mom, you were telling me about somebody online that you had seen a story from where they met somebody on the subway, right?
Yeah, so this is a story actually about Stephen Covey. He's the author of the book 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, and lots of other books. Just an amazing man, great teacher. But in his book, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, he talks about how we need to have paradigm shifts in our life. And one of the first habits he talks about is that we should seek first to understand rather than to be understood. And so he shares this experience where he was on a New York subway, and a dad with several kids got on the subway, and the dad sat down, and the kids were just going crazy. They were jumping all over, they were bugging other people, kind of running up and down the car, and Stephen Covey just kind of witnessed this whole scene, and he witnessed like other passengers were getting kind of upset and angry, and he started feeling a little bit upset and angry and impatient, and finally he went over to the dad and he's kind of like, hey, your kids are kind of being crazy. don't you think you could do something to control this, you know? And he admittedly that he had a little bit of irritation in his voice and he wasn't super kind about it, right? And the dad, it's kind of like he just came back to reality for a minute and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. We just came from the hospital where their mom just died. And I guess they don't really know what to do about it. And I don't either. And Stephen Covey talks a lot about like how immediately you have this paradigm shift. Now you understand what's going on. And immediately you want to offer help. What can I do to help your kids? Can I help the other passengers understand? I'm so sorry, is there anything I can do for you? And the behavior didn't, like, Stephen Covey's behavior was influenced by the paradigm shift. The paradigm shift was not influenced by Stephen Covey's behavior. And so he talks about how it's important to seek first to understand what's going on in other people's lives so that we can be compassionate, so we can understand why they're acting the way they are without judging. We don't get irritated when we understand that this man just lost his wife, right?
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
Powerful story.
Yeah, it hit me pretty deep because, you know, I've personally had that happen too, where, you know, as an adult, like since having this experience with mom and having a couple of people in my life kind of explain the reasons why they acted in a certain way towards me, or even friends from high school that I talked to later about like our friendship or why they treated me a certain way during high school, just kind of shifts the perspective of like, oh, like, yeah, they did hurt me or they did act in a certain way against me, but they were going through some crazy stuff in their own life, and it makes it so much easier to forgive those actions knowing the cause of the actions. There was one time when I was walking down the street, I don't even know where I was going because this whole interaction just like totally changed my entire day, but I remember I was walking and this woman just like walked right into me, and I was like, oh, like, are you okay? And she just looked at me and she went, watch where you're going, like, what were you thinking, like, are you paying attention to what you're doing, like stop being so like self-involved or something like that. And I just immediately, like, I was looking at her face and I was like, at first, the very first reaction was like, I didn't bump into you, like, but when I was looking at her face, I could tell that her eyes were kind of misty-eyed, like it seemed like she had been crying, like something was going on, and I just like looked up at her and I said, you know what, I'm really sorry for bumping into you, but are you okay? Like, is everything all right? And she just like looked at me, like still had anger in her face, and it just suddenly like melted away, and she just started crying and started talking about how she had just been at the hospital and her husband had passed away, and that she was dealing with so much and didn't have any way to like process it or how she was going to talk to her kids about it. And she had gone for a walk and felt like I bumped into her and just was immediately angry because she didn't have any other emotion. She couldn't be sad anymore. And so we sat down like right there on the sidewalk and started talking back and forth, and I was comforting her, and it was just an entirely different experience than if I had been, I didn't bump into you, you bumped into me, what's the matter with you? Like, instead, coming from a place of like, are you okay? And it turned out it was that way. Like, sometimes people are just, you know, not caring about the other people that are around them, but I think most of the time it is that there's something else that's going on in their lives that is troubling and it making them not be able to think about other people at that time. And that kind of cemented in that lesson to me after having that happen. And that was like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years after the whole interaction between me and mom, where I was a full grown adult in California, where people are really mean in California, like a lot of the time. But it just like, sometimes people just need somebody to talk to.
People are in a lot of pain in California too.
Yeah.
So, love my Californians. Just saying. So, hey, Mariah, are there other parts of this conversation you want to explore? Because I'm also curious, like, if you want to give everybody an update on like how things have been since our last show.
Yeah, so this week has been really difficult. I've, been doing chemo every day. I was really, really tired on Tuesday, and then even worse on Thursday. And on Saturday, I actually had a seizure at chemotherapy, and so I've been put on bed rest. It's probably related to my lupus, but I don't really have like concrete answers just yet about everything that's going on. It's been a really difficult week. Like, this is the first day that I've like really spent major time outside of my room to do anything. But it's been difficult. I did a lot of things last week, and this week I feel like I need to kind of like find the balance of doing a lot of things with people and doing absolutely nothing. Like, find some sort of balance between those two, because it is wrecking my mental health, and I just need to find some sort of consistency with all of it. But it's difficult.
How does the relationship between the two of you work around when you're showing up and you need to find balance or consistency? Like, how do the two of you relate to each other? Like, Patti, do you coach Mariah, or do you take a hands-off approach, or what do you do?
So this is a really interesting situation for us. I love having Mariah here, and I'm glad that we can be a family for her and help take care of her. And I think we tag team, we have a lot of family living here right now. Not only Mallory, but I have another daughter, Naomi, that's living at home. These are all adult children. And I have my two sons that live at home. And one of my sons is married, so his wife lives here with us as well. And one of the reasons why we have so many people living here right now is because my husband is also going through chemotherapy. Back in September, we found out that he had gallbladder cancer. So he had his gallbladder removed. He's had several other surgeries related to that, and he's going through chemo. So we kind of tag team. But it becomes easier for me if I'm going in and talking to my husband, saying, hey, what do you need? Mariah's bedroom's right next to ours. I can come out of my room and go right into Mariah's room and say, what do you need? And if I'm getting something for my husband, I can get something for Mariah. And if I think my husband needs to be drinking a protein drink, I'll bet Mariah needs to drink a protein drink too. And so it just helps keep my mind taking care of both of them. I've had some friends say, why are you doing so much? Like, why do you take on more? To me, it doesn't feel like more. I'm doing it for one, I might as well do it for both. And it's kind of like saying, well, if my daughter had leukemia and my husband had cancer, I'm only supposed to take one or the other? It's the same thing for Mariah. She's my daughter in my heart, and of course I'll take care of her, do everything I can. But I work full time too, so I'm grateful for my kids that step up and they also help out. And sometimes they're like, come out of your room, come play games with us, come sit at the dinner table with us. One of the things we try to do as a family is have dinner at the dinner table every night. That's a really good thing to keep us connected.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
I tear up sometimes because just like it is so incredible to me, me and Mallory have such a beautiful friendship, and it's like we joke all the time. I don't know if anybody has seen Grey's Anatomy. They're like the two main characters in the first 7 or 8 seasons. No, 10 seasons is Meredith and Christina, and they say, oh, I'm your person. And when they first talk about it, they're talking about like, oh, I'm the person that's on your medical stuff. Like, if you go to the hospital, like, you're the person that they're going to call because you're my person. And that turns into this phrase for them of like, you're the person that I go to, you're the person that I need in my special moments, you're the person who understands me better than anyone. And that's, how me and Mallory feel very strongly, that we're in some ways like platonic soulmates. And when I became her friend, it was just between me and her. Like, of course I would come over to her house and spend time with her family, but it was like, that was just like a small bonus. Now, because we've been together and we've been friends for 10 years at this point, it's become like that. In a lot, like, I'm a part of the family, that this is my family, that, like, the youngest of all the kids, Lucas, he told me one time, he was saying that, like, he views me as his sister. He tells people, he introduces me to people as his sister. And I just think that there's something so beautiful about that, because in a lot of ways, blood is not what makes a family. It's very much about, like, a feeling of togetherness, of being there for each other when you need each other. And I'm so super grateful that Mom and Dad and everybody here has been able to be there for me, because when I first moved to Utah, I had no idea what I was going to do. I didn't know like where I was going to work, and Mallory brought me here, and it was almost like assumed, like, from the beginning, that I was at some point going to live in this house so that I could get back on my feet. And then when everything happened and I got diagnosed with leukemia, it was like, yep, you're gonna come and live here, and we're gonna take care of you, and we're gonna be there for you, and we're gonna get through this together. And Dad has been such a great person to be able to talk to about everything, because he understands, like, where I'm coming from and what I'm feeling about everything, and how sometimes it can just feel so hopeless, and how other times you just, like, all you have is your hope, And so, like, being able to be here and have Dad and having Mom be there for me too, like, we have such great conversations, I feel like, especially when we're, like, getting down into our feelings, and just, like, really, like, saying what we want to say. We've had so many conversations about racial situations, and talking about just in general things that are happening in the news, and compassion. Like, I feel like me and Mom are so similar in how we feel about what it means to be compassionate, and I think that's one of the things that makes me super special. And so it's really nice to have somebody in my life that shares that special quality.
It's amazing. I love the fact that family and love and community can look like different things. And one of the things I love that you talk about, Mariah, with doing this show is your hope and heart that people build a community, and they share their stories, and they find community with each other. And you've done such a great job of creating a website and Patreon and social pages. Do you want to kind of let people know how they can become part of an extended family?
Yeah, so we have up right now, we have a Patreon that you can join in. I kind of call it the Mariah Effect family, where you can, for like, all of the tiers that we have available are all under $10 a month. So it's like, for a lot of people, like, especially like somebody like me, like, I pay like $10 a month for Spotify just to have music for myself. This comes with so much more. Like, even at the smallest tier, it's at $3.99 per month, and you can get access to the episodes, bonus content, ad-free episodes, and then the next tier you're able to get some extra bonus content, like a preview of the next episode, the episode a day early, and then above that you get to have we're going to do some, like, live Q&As, so you can come and join and ask us questions that we don't really answer in the podcast for you or whatnot. And then also a handwritten letter from me. Right now we have our very first Patreon member, who I'm going to mention because that's part of the package, is Darsana, aka my birth mom, the woman who gave birth to me.
And my cousin.
And Jason's actual cousin, because I'm
That's
his
right.
second cousin, whatever it is.
Something like that.
First cousin once removed. It's funny because Mom is the one who told me, who explained it to me, and I just always forget immediately after the conversation. Yeah, so there's different levels to the tiers. It's all on patreon.com/the Mariah Effect. And we also have the links to that on the website, which is the Mariah-Effect.com. And that has access to the show notes for all of these episodes. So if there's ever anything that we're talking about in the episode, like for this episode, I'll put a link to a video where the guy, what was his name again?
Stephen Covey.
Stephen Covey was talking about that on YouTube. I'll put a link to that. Any other information or materials that we talk about in the show, I'll put on there, or quotes from the show. It'll have an outline of like what we're talking about in the show. There's also the blog that's on there where I talk about, I sit in chemotherapy on a Saturday and, you know, just write about my week so far and things that are coming to me in the moment. And it usually has like the update about what's going on with me medically. And then, you know, it has all the links to all of our social content and everything, and links to where you can listen to the podcast. If you're listening on Spotify and you want to find out how to listen on Good Pods, which is something I didn't know existed until now, then the link will be on there too.
Amazing. Well, anything else on your mind before here? I have one request actually. I'd love to have Patti back. I feel like Patti's got so much to share with us. How do you feel about that, Mariah?
I feel like that's a good idea. I mean, 35 years of marriage, did you hear that? Like, that's older than I am. There's a lot of stories to be had.
I hope so, because my eldest daughter is older than you, so I hope that it's older than you. More years than you are old.
No, the sort of like marital lessons would be interesting, but I'm more interested in how you stay looking so young, because I did not see you telling us you're a grandma too, so I'm kind of like head explode here.
Oh, I owe all of that to my mom. It's the Japanese genes.
Oh, okay. Unfair advantage. Got it.
Yeah, you're the whitest out of all of us, Jason, unfortunately.
I just said to Mariah, I have something more I want to say.
Ooh.
So, and I should have told you this before we actually started recording, but I had this idea when I was thinking about this earlier, that at the end of your podcast, you should always ask your guest, what does it mean to you to try compassion? Because that's your tagline, right? Try compassion. And I love that. I love that we're just trying to help encourage people to be more compassionate. And I would love to hear from all your guests, what does that mean to try compassion? So I want to be the first one to answer that question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
So I mentioned at the very beginning that I'm the daughter of a Christian dad and a Buddhist mom. And when I was a little girl, well, not really little, like in high school, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with religion in my life. And I'd go to a lot of different churches trying to figure out, is this church the one I want to go to? Is this church the one I want to go to? And my mom invited me to go to temple with her. And at that time I said, you know what, Mom, I need to stay Christian, but thank you. And the reality was that exploring Eastern religions scared me, because I worried that it would pull me away from my Christian beliefs, and I didn't want that. You know, fast forward now to where I am, and studying Eastern philosophies is, pardon the pun, but very enlightening to me. And I have found that it doesn't contradict with my Christian beliefs, but that it gives more clarity and understanding. So what I want to say about try compassion, I think in Western religions and Western society, we are focused on being perfect, overcoming sin, overcoming our weaknesses. You know, in the Bible, Jesus said, "Be ye therefore perfect." And we just take that literally. We got to be perfect in everything. We have to have the perfect life, perfect home, perfect kids, perfect marriage, perfect job, perfect dogs. But life isn't perfect. And what I've learned about Eastern philosophies is that they focus on compassion. And yes, we want to be better in our lives. We want to improve. We want to be good. But as we take this journey to becoming that person, we are compassionate with ourselves, with our fellow travelers, with everything that we come across. My favorite analogy is to look at nature. You go up to the mountains. I love where I live. We can be like in solitude in the mountains in like 15 minutes. It's amazing. But when you look at nature, it is not perfect. And it's always changing. But we say that it's beautiful. And isn't life that way? Life is not perfect. It's always changing. But it's beautiful. Me as a person, you as a person, humanity, we are not perfect. But we can change. We're always working on changing, hopefully for the better. And that is beautiful. So for me, when you say try compassion, I'm like, yeah, let's just be compassionate with ourselves, with others. Allow for imperfections. Allow for change. And see the beauty.
Gosh, and it's so funny because we had that conversation before, and even just hearing you talk about it again, it still gives me that feeling of like, this is the right thing. Like, I, have been doing this podcast mostly as a way to be able to keep my mind going while I can't do so many things right now. But like, at the end of the day, like, the whole point of this is to be able to reach other people and to be able to help other people with whatever they're going through. And so when you say something like that, I'm like, okay, like, I know that this is the right thing to do. I know that this is like a good thing that I'm doing.
It's an amazing thing that you're doing, Mariah. And it has the potential to reach so many people. And if those of us who listen and support you, if we can take these moments to just internalize what you're doing, what your goal is, you are going to make the world a better place. You already have, but you'll continue to do that. And I'm honored to be a small part of that.
Oh, dang, where's the tissue? I forgot tissue. Oh.
I believe Patti just said what the Mariah Effect is all about.
Yeah. I was thinking of like how to do like a sign off for this episode today, and I don't even want to say it because Mom said it so beautifully. But do you have any other thoughts, Jason?
No, it's yours to take us home. That was beautiful.
Yeah. But I just want to like remind everybody that like, instead of only being kind to people who are being kind first, just be kinder, be even more kind to the people that are, clearly having a hard time, clearly going through something, being rude to other people because they need that compassion, they need that kindness to come from someone, and most people aren't going to do that. And so if you're the person that's doing that, then you are changing their paradigm. You're changing the way that they're seeing the world right now, and that could be life-changing. Remember that you don't know what anybody is dealing with or going through. Try compassion. I will see everybody next week for our next episode.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
I love you.
I love you too.
Mwah. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Bye.
See ya. Bye.